Welcome back to Major League Mindset. This is episode 4. I am overly excited to have Maurice Simpkins on today. If you don't know who he is, you are about to hear one of the craziest stories of how an individual got his way, earned his way to spend time in the NFL. Maurice spent time with the Rock River Raptors back in 2008, the Green Bay Blizzard in 2010, 2 professional arena football leagues, and then found himself playing with the Green Bay Packers and the St. Louis Rams. I'm super excited to have him. Maurice, welcome. How you doing?
I'm doing well. Thank you, Andy, for having me. Thank you very much.
Awesome. Well, more importantly, Maurice, you are also the founder of AM Simpkins, an ERP consulting firm. So why don't you start by telling us a little bit about your business today?
Okay, yeah. AM Simpkins and Associates is a higher education focused consulting firm. We mainly do work working with the Lucian colleague ERP, performing the works of integrations, development, but providing all of the consulting needs within the world of higher education IT administration.
Awesome. And so you focus on higher education specifically?
Yes, sir. That's the main area that we work on. Again, stories from my grandfather. He told me that working in education or working somewhere within the funeral system would be a great way to make sure that I had a funneled path of guaranteed work in front of me.
All right, let's go. Let's start right there. Let's start with your grandpa. You know, he's been a big mentor in your life, and people right now may have just heard what you said about working in the funeral services and
Mm.
gone, huh? Take us back to your childhood, and you had a lot of graveside chats with your grandpa, and you can
Mhm.
explain why that is. But I want you to hone in on that one specific story, that day, that hot day in South Carolina when you were digging a grave for your grandpa. Why don't you take us there?
Yeah, so I originally started, digging graves with my grandfather when I was about 11, but this had happened when I was around 10th, 11th grade. So it's probably 15, 16 years old or so. But my grandfather takes me out and we're out and we're in the area that kind of like I call sand land kind of. It's not a very hard area. The dirt's not too hard. And we're going out and we're there. We go and we set up the tents and everything. And I've noticed that the guy who usually brings the tractor in, Mr. Stanley, is yet to arrive. And so, after we have the tent set up, we rope it off. We get ready to just take the top layer of soil off, what most people call sod. Take the first layer of dirt off so we can get to the dirt. And my grandfather looks around and said, well, Mr. Stanley's not here. I'm gonna get in the truck and go find him. You start digging until he gets back, until we get back, and then we'll see what happens. We'll have Stanley come and help us finish it out. And my grandfather was gone for about 3 hours, probably longer. I mean, as a kid, it seemed like forever and a day. It probably was longer than 3 hours, truthfully, because I literally dug this entire grave. I started. I mean, I did mentally what he told me to do. You started one end and work your way around, but I dug out the entire side of it, and I was probably 3/4 away done. And my grandfather and one of his friends pulled back up, and they pull up in the truck, and the guy looks over. It's on the passenger side and looks over to me, and I'm about well over waist deep into the grave, and he says, Andrew, which was my grandfather's name. He says, I think that boy about got the whole dug. And grandfather kind of smiles and drives on straight to the shade tree. That was all he did. I mean, he sat there, got out of the truck, sat on the back of the truck. The guy brought me a little snack, Coca-Cola, some crackers and a sandwich type of thing. I eat that, and then I look, and he's gone. He's walked back over to where my grandfather's at, and they're sitting on the back of the truck, legs swinging. I'm sitting here with the shovel in my hand. So I was like, I guess Mr. Stanley gonna be here sometime soon. I keep digging, I'm looking around, and before I know it, I'm like literally the grave is what I would call a done grave. It's where if we were digging with a tractor with the backhoe would now pull out, and we would jump down in by hand and do it. So we're about at that point when my grandfather and his friend walked back up, and they got their little spade shovels, which is a little flat shovel to kind of edge the grave out. And my grandfather looks at me, and I look up at them with this strange look on your face, like, now you come and I'm done. And he hands me the shovel. He says, you want to do this too? And I'm like, yeah, I might as well. So I get the shovel and I'm doing it. He's kind of showing me how to do it. It's my first time ever doing it by myself. And the ground is softer, so it'll cave in a little easier. So he had a different technique with doing it. I do that, pack it all down, and never really, thought about what I had just done. I just was doing what I was told to do, what I knew to do. And like I said, we was on the way home, and my grandfather looked at me, and he looked at me like, I mean, my granddad didn't really say, he didn't have like these stop the clouds type, talk to you moments, but he would give you this look when you knew he was going to say something to you. He was like, "Don't ever say what you can't do." I was like, "What you talking about, Granddad?" He said, "You just dig that hole by yourself." I was like, "Yeah." He said, "A couple of days ago." I was like, "Oh, come on, Granddad, here you go." Because few days prior to that, I had made a statement that said I would never dig a grave out in this hot heat by myself. I said that's slavery type things. That's not what people do today. And what my grandfather was trying to get me to understand was doing that out there wasn't slavery type things. It was, about having mental fortitude.
Mm.
And when I was there were some times when I wanted to just put the shovel down and say, I'm gonna sit here and wait for them. And even when my grandfather showed back up, I kind of was in between, do I take a rest with them and they're gonna come join me? Or I know my grandfather and he expects me to continue to work type of thing. So I did it. And from that, that lesson, he kind of showed me that it's a mental thing. And when you're
Yep.
going into whatever it is, don't let what you see, get you down or beat you before you actually get out there and make it happen. Because mentally, if you can take yourself and have yourself prepared, then you're well ahead of the game. And I did that in everything in life. I did that in football, watching film. I was the kid who was doing tendency charts with Excel in high school. Like that was me.
Yeah.
I did it in business the same way. And so that mentality has really permeated through all the phases of my life, be it sports, professions, or even just family life, the likes.
Well, that's awesome, Ray. So let's start with that mindset, because I feel like that mindset then led you to a very, very successful high school football career in South Carolina, which gave you the chance to play football at Coastal Carolina, where you were a linebacker. But if you folks watching this video were to look at Maurice's LinkedIn profile, you'll notice something really interesting. Maurice graduated from Coastal Carolina in 2006. He didn't sign with the Green Bay Packers until 2010. So Maurice, let's go back to that 4-year
Mhm.
journey. It wasn't all paved. The way wasn't paved for you to NFL stardom. You had to
Mhm.
learn how to be both an athlete and a businessman at the same time. And there was one person I think you mentioned had a really big impact on
Mhm.
your 4-year journey from playing with the Rock River Raptors to getting a chance to play with the Green Bay Packers. So tell us a little bit about Miss Barb Gill.
Yeah. So, one of I graduated again in 2006, and I touted myself pretty heavily. I was a football player, but I really, really touted on my 2 degrees here behind me, as you can see. I had a computer science degree and a business management degree, and I was like, okay, I'll find the job of my dreams, where I want to work. And what I have been more fortunate to do was to find the bosses of my or the directors of my dreams, because every IT
Mm.
director I've worked under has been absolutely perfect. They're the type of people that I mimic my life after, to the point of where my most recent IT director I'm actually trying to hire as the vice president of my consulting firm.
Hmm.
But what Miss Barb did for me was set the bar very high, and she did that by, I started working there after out of school, and again, I didn't have very much. I was a college graduate with very little, and so I made it work going back and forth to work with with the little means that I had. And one day, one of my friends who had played running back with me at Coastal Carolina called me and gave me an opportunity to say, "Hey, let's go play arena football in Illinois." And I was like, "Wow, that sounds like a plan. I would want to play ball." It wasn't much money, but it was something I wanted to do. But I had the commitment of working at that moment, and so I had to formulate, get the gusto up to go in and talk to Miss Barb Gill, who I had so much respect for. And I sat her down, and I was talking to her, and I was like, you know, um, football is my dream. I
Mhm.
love computers. I really love what I do. I love this job, but football is my dream. And she talked to me about some things about life, and talked to me. She said, well, you told me that computers were your dream as well. And I said, well, they are, but football is like right now and in front of me. And she really coached me through some things, and that conversation ended, and I went away feeling like, oh my goodness, how is she going to accept it? I don't know. But it was like a couple days later, she calls me into her office, and we're sitting there, we're having a conversation, and she says, Maurice, I hear you're pretty good at football. I asked my son, I asked my husband, a couple guys, I said, yeah, you had a pretty good career at Coastal, and I guess if people are calling for you to play, you must be pretty good. She says, but I want to let you know you're pretty good at what you do here too. And I don't see a reason why you have to leave if you're going to go play football. And I was like, ma'am, I was like, but it's in Illinois and we're in Myrtle Beach, South Carolina. That's not going to happen like that. And she's like, well, let me talk for a second. and as she's talking, she starts pulling out this laptop, this IBM ThinkPad, and she's opening. I got chills. She's opening the zipper to a laptop bag, and she slides the laptop inside the bag, and she's just talking to me about life and things. And then she looks at me and she says, "Well, Maurice, why can't you live both of your dreams?" She's like,
Mm,
"Why can't you be a football player and a computer programmer?"
so good.
And I was like, "Well, Miss Barb, I mean, I don't know why I can't." She says, "Well, you're going to have to tell me that you can't because you're not leaving." And the company was called Builders First Source. Because you're not leaving Builders First Source. You're going to take this computer with you. Then she stopped and says, "You have an internet connection?" I said, "Yes, ma'am. I'll have internet connection anywhere I go." She says, "Well, you're going to take this computer with you. You're going to connect to your internet connection. You're going to continue your responsibilities every day." She says, "Now, I do recognize that Chicago's on a different time zone than we are, so you're going to have to be understanding of that." And I was like, "Yes, ma'am." She had all of this planned out
Yep.
because she wanted what was best for me. And so not only did that show me how to be an employee, but in the days when I became a director and had teams working underneath me, that was one of the very first things I said to every one of my team. Like, what are your dreams? I am here to help you facilitate
Mm.
your dreams coming true, because that's what Miss Barb did for me. And she was, no, in her eyes, nothing more than an IT director to me. But in my eyes, she really inspired me to say I can be that student athlete for life. I've been a student athlete all my life anyway, since I played little league football at 7. I can now go into my professional career and be a student athlete or professional athlete, and not just be in the world of athletics, but be a professional in IT, in the world of business, and combine that with the world of football.
Oh, that is so awesome. I mean, the lesson she taught you about the yes and of life, right? You
Hmm.
can't have this or that. How about this and that? And that
Yeah,
ability to expand your mind to not only chase your dream, but ultimately chase what you're doing today, which is that successful business we know as AM Simpkins. I mean,
yeah,
I don't think you would you agree? You probably wouldn't be where you are today without that ability to continue being
yeah.
a programmer, even while you were pursuing your dreams of professional football.
That is true.
Yeah, and so let's now you had a 4-year journey in the professional arena football league, and
Hmm.
even had a gap in between playing for the Rock River Raptors and the Green Bay Blizzard.
Hmm.
Take it to 2010.
Okay.
The Green Bay Blizzard season had just ended,
Okay.
and walk the audience through the day you got that call and what lesson you learned in your 2010 season, spending time both with the Green Bay Packers and the St. Louis Rams.
Okay. So it was, the end of the season with the Blizzard ended somewhere around June. And since I was working as a consultant and I worked from my computer, I could work from anywhere in the world. That's what I tell the kids when I talk. And, working from anywhere in the world for me was Green Bay, Wisconsin, because I continued to train and I would continue to work out and try to get better. So I would wake up in the morning and set my setup on my computer, and then I would go to work out, and I would train for 4 or 5, sometimes 6 hours. I would have done BB House of Speed with Mr. Scotty Smith and BJ, and they transformed me, getting me really, really fast and building out my ability to be faster. But every day when I would leave, I would shoot home, and I probably wouldn't leave anymore for the rest of the day, because I would go into my house and I would pull up the computer, and that's what I did. It was fun for me. It was my life, and that's what I was doing on the morning of August 10th, 2010, when I got a call from Elliot Wolf, who at that time we had some interaction. I had sent him YouTube videos of every week when I made great plays. Every week of my game film, I would send it to him. And Elliot reached out and gave me a call and said, "It's about 9:45." He said, "Hey, Maurice, what are you doing?" And I'm literally sitting at my computer writing a program for a school out in Colorado, I think. And he says, I was like, "Well, I'm working. Why? What's going on?" He says, "Well, are you in Green Bay?" And I said, "Yeah." And for me, that statement was a lot, because my computer, my IT world, is what allowed me to remain in Green Bay, because
Mm-hmm.
most of the players at the end of the season, it's arena ball. They
Yep.
leave. Minor
Yep.
leagues, you're gone after the season. There's no more place to stay.
Yep.
But I was able to do that because I had a job. I was able to pay my own way and have a life there. And so I was like, "Yes, I am." He says, "Well, we've had some linebackers go down, and we're bringing some guys in this morning. If you're available, then I think this is a perfect opportunity for you to at least say that you gave it up, that you gave it all you got. And I mean, you can't tell me that I didn't give you an opportunity."
Yeah.
That's kind of how he was, talking. We joked back and forth a little bit. And I say, "Sure thing, man. I mean, cool, yeah, I'm ready. He's all right. You let me be here at 10:30, and I was like 45 minutes. I'm like, I'm literally sitting here writing a program. He's like, well, I mean, 10:30, we'll see you then. Told me to call him when I got there. He'd bring me in the gate, and that was that. I got over there. I called my mom, of course, and called some people. I got over there, and I worked. They brought me in, and in that moment, I was a little starstruck.
Hmm.
It's your dream to play in the NFL, and then you walk into one of the most historic NFL franchises of all time, and you're in the locker room, and you walk in, and you walk past the Super Bowl trophies, and you're sitting there, and you got all the greats in the pictures, and you're just your bubbles and your agita just going crazy inside of you, and then they take us over across to the practice field, and I'm still all nervous because, when I was in the locker room, all these guys had like NFL paraphernalia. Like one guy had just came from the Patriots. He was coming off an injury. Another guy was like, yeah, I spent a few years in the NFL. I was like, and I realized out of the four guys who were working out, I was the only guy who did not have NFL experience before that day. The only guy. And the only thing that kind of kept me grounded at that specific moment, because I got to be a little timid, was, I mean, everything I've ever really, truly, truly, truly put my all into has in some way, shape, or form come true. I'm a blessed individual to say that.
Hmm.
In my life, every dream I've set for myself has come true. I can't say that it's because I have, this relentless work ethic to say that anything I'm going to go for, I'm going to go at it, but that's just how I was. And so that kept me a little calm. But then when I got to the NFL, over to the Green Bay Packers practice field, and you see everything, and you're in the green and gold, and and you're there, and you're like, wow, I'm on the field, I'm about to work out. And then, you know, Coach Kevin Green comes in, and I'm from South Carolina. I was young when the Carolina Panthers came to town, and Coach Green was a staple, was a linebacker there. So I
Hmm.
idolized. I grew up as a safety. I
Okay.
didn't want to play linebacker. I thought I was too small to play linebacker. I thought I was a safety. But when I became a linebacker, I watched a lot of his film. I watched a lot of how he played and a lot of his antics, and a lot of his energy. And I tried to take that into my game as a linebacker. And so I'm standing there, and it was almost like the reverse of like a starstruck moment, because when he walked in and started talking to me, it's like I snapped out of that. Oh my God. I was like, oh, it's time to play football. Like, this is Kevin Green snapping his fingers in front of me and saying, are you ready to go? Are you ready to go? There was nothing else to do but go out and perform. And so I went out, I performed with everything I had, literally everything I had. I ran the fastest 40 I had ever ran in my life, the fastest 3-cone draw I ever ran in my life. I had a out of body experience. And at the end of that, they told us, okay, we'll let you guys know something. You guys can, go on home. And I got in my car and I drove back to my house. And no joke, I opened my computer back up. I called my mom. I said, they didn't sign me, so they must have gonna sign one of the other guys. I called a couple of my friends. I said, man, I heard nothing back. So they said, what you finna do? I said, finna work. What you mean I'm what finna do? I got my computer on my lap. I got my computer, started back working, and it was a couple hours later, Reggie McKenzie, who ended up
Hmm.
going out to the Raiders. And Reggie was a fraternity brother of mine, and he gave me a call. He said, "Hey, young man, I just wanted to really talk to you about your demeanor." He really gave me a lot of compliments on how I carried myself when I came in, and it really, really, to me, it wasn't really a commendation on myself. It was more of my upbringing. Like I could hear him saying, we see a good guy in you," and he was saying, telling me some things about myself, and he said, we actually made the decision to think that you thought that you were the best player earlier today, but Ted Thompson was out on a scouting visit, and we weren't able to get in touch with him. So we've been able to confirm with him, and I just want to let you know that you'll be the newest member of the Green Bay Packers. And I was like, oh my gosh, like, oh my gosh. The second time I never, and this is really the second time I never shut my computer down. And this was what was funny. I never shut my computer down that second time. And I called everyone. I called the people I was working with, the consulting firm I was working with, and I called everyone else. I said, hey, I just got signed to the Packers. Like, it's for real. I am on the team. I got to be at Lambeau at 12:30 because they're going to fit me out and do like a news conference. And like, I'm a Green Bay Packer. And everyone was like, what? Oh, wow, wow. And I just left my house, just literally left, got ready, got all my stuff together, went dry, drove by my homeboy's house, tell them, man, I'm about to be a Packer. Come to practice today. Come to practice today. Come to practice. And all the arena guys who were still there, they all came out and, came to practice with me and everything. And that whole experience as a day was just something for me, as a whole.
Yep.
And I went to practice that evening, and in that first practice, and I've been a part of some great, great, great football teams. I played for some great coaches. And again, I've been blessed with some great IT directors. So I seen structure, I seen productivity, I seen a lot of things. But the regiment of discipline and the way with which it was an understood culture in
Yep.
Green Bay was something that was leaps and bounds ahead of anything I'd ever seen, to the point of where in our very first football practice, after our first practice, I called my mom and told her, I said, Mom, the Green Bay Packers are going to win the Super Bowl this year. And my mom, being a Steelers fan, wasn't really hearing it, but I was serious with it. I said, hey, we're going to win the Super Bowl this year. It was just that good. And later on in the year, I get released and I find myself in St. Louis, and
Hmm.
the structure and the culture in St. Louis was completely different than the structure and the culture in Green Bay. And you could see the difference in Green Bay, Packers being a Super Bowl winning team in the 2010 season, and, the team of the St. Louis Rams missing out on the playoffs. So for me, I was able to see what worked even in the industry that I didn't see myself in for a very long time, or something that I thought I would really be a great in. Um, I've
But
actually, gotten to the point where I was satisfied with being a computer programmer who told stories about his time playing football.
that's such a huge identity shift a lot of former professional athletes can't make, right?
Yeah.
And it's so what that key message I took from that story was not only your persistence, man, 4-year journey through professional arena league football to thinking your career was over, computer programming, and here you are getting the chance to play with the Green Bay Packers. And unfortunately that year you split time with the Packers and the Rams, didn't get to
Yeah.
win the Super Bowl with the Packers, but such an important lesson for sales teams out there to know that. Ironically, wasn't it interesting that the Packers were one of the most prepared teams you had ever been a part of, and they won the Super Bowl that year?
Yeah.
Wow, preparation equals success. So let's finish up with this, Maurice. Here you are running a successful business, AM Simpkins.
Mhm.
If you were to give one or two pieces of advice to a young sales professional, knowing what you went through as a professional athlete to now running a successful consulting business, what would those one or two pieces of advice be?
For me, the number one thing is going to be taking the cerebral side of yourself and applying it to everything that you do in the
Mm,
sales world. So, like for me, for instance, I was a linebacker, and I wasn't the fastest, I wasn't the biggest, I wasn't the strongest, but I had, crazy work ethic, and I was intelligent enough to look at football from a different side. I looked at the tendencies, and I watched film. And so I would sit down with film, and I would sit down with film, and I would not only just watch the film of the team, but I would watch the specific player who was going to be blocking me, or the specific player I was going to go against, so I could see how I fit into beating that player.
mhm.
And I took that approach all the way through the NFL, and to the point of where I watched film relentlessly, whether I was on the practice squad watching film against our team to make them better, or getting ready to prepare for the team, watching film, understanding tendencies, knowing things about people. Um, in the business world, it has translated for me as a one-to-one directly. I can't ask for a more perfect setup, because I now, if I'm going to, if I reach out to a higher education executive, be a CIO or president or someone like that, I have, before I get on the phone with them or send that send button on the email, I have researched them as if they were
Mm.
the starting running back on the opposing team. I know all of their tendencies. I know when they lean left, when they lean right. I may know their kids' names. I may know their vacation home locations. Like, I go out and I try to find everything I can about them, because I may be having a conversation, and we may just start with something like, hey, yeah, the weather's so and so, but I might have looked up their location,
Mhm.
their campus on Google Earth, and saw, oh man, this campus is beautiful in this time of the fall, and the leaves are falling. And so when they bring up the question about how's the weather, I say, yeah, it's okay. Atlanta's not too pretty in the fall time, but I'm sure your campus is just gleaming with gorgeousness, with all the flowers and all of the leaves falling right now, and making it a beautiful scene. And then that they're like, wow, like then at that moment they've gone from, okay, this is a sales guy, to, okay, this is a conversation. And then from this is a conversation, you start talking a little bit more, and if you know what you're talking about, then you can talk to get them to that point where, okay, this is a comfortable conversation. And once I can get for me, when I get a client to that point of comfortable conversation,
Mm-hmm.
they usually start to ask me about football. And they'll
Yep.
say, well, how did you mix football and IT? That's when I know I've gotten them to a comfortable conversation. And from that point, my only other goal is to get them to a continued conversation, for them to say, man, we got to continue. We got to talk again. If they can say that in our first call, then I know that I have done what I needed to do in that call. So that's really how
Well,
I use the cerebral side of being a linebacker with how I attack the business
Well,
world.
and here's what you're saying, Maurice. If you're in sales today, especially with social media, you have no excuse to not be
Oh yeah.
prepared. I mean, there is so much you can find about people today and do research on folks or
Mm-hmm.
the companies you're going to be meeting with, that there is no way you should have the excuse of not being prepared when you walk into a sales meeting. Guys,
Exactly.
if you're out there watching this video, I hope you were taking notes today. I mean, this thing could have easily been 60 minutes. But Maurice, his story, his journey, his career is all about preparation, having the mindset of never giving up, knowing who you are, and doing your homework. If you're in sales right now, you need every single one of those things if you want to be successful today. And to top it off, Maurice was a programmer and a professional football player at the same time. You know how productive you had to be to do both effectively? So Maurice, last question for you is, if somebody watching this today wants to reach out to you, how can they best get a hold of you?
They could reach out to me via email. My email is msimpkins at AMSA Consulting, spelled MSIMPKINS at AMSAconsulting.com. Or they could find us on our website at www.amsa-consulting.com, or follow my nonprofit Andrew Simpkins Innovation Foundation at the asifoundations.com as well.
Awesome. Maurice, thanks for your time, man. I really appreciate this. This is one of the best interviews I have done and probably will do. So thank you for your time. Folks, if you're out there listening, remember, if you're in sales, you're struggling with where you are today, you are always just one mindset shift away from greatness. That's it. This is all for week 4, episode 4. Stay tuned. We'll see you next week.